A few years back, I was working on a sequence of really simple fundamentals with a high handicap golfer. And then I remember going home that evening and I was watching the PGA Tour, and lo and behold, there I see Xander Schauffele working the exact same three-step pattern. So what does that mean? These players are so familiar with these fundamentals of the swing that they even use them out on the course. It's become part of their repertoire, like scales are to a musician. Now, if you contrast that to the way that many of us practice on the range, looking for the next fix, and it all becomes a bit chaotic, trying to make new moves and new kind of fixes on top of fixes. Wouldn't it be better just to work consistently towards basic fundamentals? Or as Bruce Lee puts it, I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks, but the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. Now this is one I would really love you to take to the range and give it a go. It is very, very simple, but with huge benefits. So what I've done is I've created a practice plan, which I've linked down below, which will give you that step-by-step process. And if you're new to the channel, then please consider subscribing. We do this every week, and hopefully we'll see you here more often. So let's do that. Today we're going to work on some really simple fundamentals, and hopefully you'll become so familiar with them, it will keep you on the straight and narrow and avoid a whole multitude of possible pitfalls and herky-jerky movements. So first up then would be the takeaway. I mean, this is going to be a really familiar checkpoint. If we think about players, well, I think probably every player on the tour practices this stuff at some point, and you'll see them in their pre-shot routines. I'm thinking Justin Thomas, Ricky Fowler in particular. They have this move where they're constantly rehearsing that takeaway motion. So what we're looking for then is, and you can see my feet and the direction I'm hitting. So I've got my ball to target line, and I am trying to get to a situation where when the shaft is horizontal, it is also parallel with my ball to target line, and the club face, or the toe of the club, is pointing straight up or slightly turned down a little bit. And I wouldn't get lost in that distinction. And as I'm doing that, I'm allowing my rib cage to turn. My left wrist is very slightly cupped, and my right elbow has folded slightly, i.e. not a straight arm. And of course, you know, as we learn to really master these positions, we look for smaller distinctions, but let's keep it really simple today. So that means I'm actually going to push down on the handle a little bit and rotate my shoulders and gently rotate my arms to that point. So club shaft horizontal, club shaft also parallel with my ball to target line, toe in the air. That's a familiar position. And a related pattern to that, of course, is holding my dual coloured ball and just allowing my arms to move to my side as I turn my rib cage, and you'll see there how the yellow and blue ball, the seam of it, points pretty much straight up, if not slightly to the right, and that again has me coordinate my turn of my chest and the slight rotation of my arms. And if you've done that well, then the next step is relatively straightforward. So that would be from our first position here, what we'll call position one, or step one if you like. The arms would then lift up as you continue to turn your rib cage, and your right hip moves back behind you. And you'll be familiar with that look of the club, which points somewhere between, down parallel with our ball to target line to slightly right of that, depending on how much you turn and other things. So from step one, arms lift, continue to turn, and keeping the elbows relatively close together without being sort of overly pinched. Now, an important part of that motion then is that there is actually an arm lift in the backswing. So many of us get caught up with trying to get the club. I mean, we know the club's got to get up here somewhere, and we get caught up with trying to do it with our body, our chest, or our hips, and then we get all these kind of unhealthy twists and turns of the spine and the pelvis. So step one, step two is a lift, and continue to rotate, which makes step three then getting back down to what some coaches call pre-delivery. We'll call it our step three if you like, and that is just, if we've lifted our arms up to the top, then as we rotate our body back to where we started, we need to be just dropping the arms back to that same point where the shaft is parallel with our ball to target line when it reaches horizontal, and the face once again toe up or slightly turned in. So that is my arms dropping down while my body is doing the reverse of what it did on the way up, which was to rotate and move up slightly and back down to its initial position. So step 3 has our knees and hips back to where they start and the club drop back down to our first position, if you like. Hold on, that's 3 steps and I haven't hit it yet. I know, it's more than 3 steps, but the next one's really simple, and once you've got momentum on your side, it almost happens on its own. Besides, if I'd have said 4 steps, there's no way you'd have clicked this video. So we've got 1, 2, 3, those are our main checks. Moving into impact, if you're doing that well, is relatively straightforward. It is simply a case of us returning our arms back to where they started. So that is, you know, our arms at step 3 are rotated to the right. I just need to get my glove, or my watch if you like, rotated back to where they were when they started. That is my watch pointing in that direction. Meanwhile, keeping my right arm still bent. So it's down to step 3 and rotate them back to impact. And of course that rotation of the arms swings the club out and squares it up. So it's 1, 2, 3 to here. You can see I'm using my knees as well as my arms to drop down, and then there's that rotation bit at the bottom. And of course, as I'm rotating my arms, you'll feel intuitively that your legs are going to get involved and start to rotate with you. And on face value, that may seem like quite a lot, but if you asked an experienced musician, you know, could you go through 3 or 4, you know, simple scales in a chord progression, they'd be like, absolutely yes, and all the way up and down the register. And that's really all we're trying to do here. As you become more and more familiar with these basic patterns, of course you start to look for more and more detail, and they become reassuringly familiar. And in that way, you'll end up using them not just in your practice, but also on the course, to keep you on the straight and narrow, excuse the pun, but to keep your swing working and functioning the same every time. Thank you for watching. Now, if you want to work with me, but you're not in the local area, then you can always we can always arrange online lessons. That's available, or you can also download the Golf Coach Access app and be part of that growing community. But before I see you next time, give that drill a try, and good luck. Play well.